What happens when love and music intertwine? Find out in Lee Adams' newest release, Love on Tour. Set against the backdrop of a thrilling concert tour, this story explores passion, heartbreak, and finding your true melody. Perfect for anyone who believes in second chances and unforgettable moments. Don't miss out. Pre-order your copy at leeadamsbooks.com today and be part of the story that will rock your world.
Hey everyone, it's Rich Bennett. Can you believe it? The show is turning 10 this year. I am so grateful for each and every one of you who've tuned in, shared an episode, or even joined the conversation over the years. You're the reason that this podcast has grown into what it is today. Together, we've shared laughs, tears, and moments that truly matter. So I want to thank you for being part of this journey. Let's make the next 10 years even better.
Coming to you from the Freedom Federal Credit Union Studios, Harford County Living presents Conversations with Rich Bennett.
Slow pitch transfer.
It's probably the least sexy part of organizing. That's okay. No. The truth is.
Welcome to Conversations with Rich Bennett. I'm your host, Rich Bennett, and today we have an incredible guest with us. Someone who has faced life's toughest battles head on and turned them into a mission to help others. Rick Cheatham is a seasoned marriage coach and transformational speaker, but before that, he spent his career serving as a fire captain and firefighter association president in Anaheim, California. His story is one of true resilience, overcoming personal struggles with addiction, the heartbreaking loss of his oldest son, and a severe neck injury that left him relearning how to walk just 5 months after retirement. Through it all, Rick has remained dedicated to his family, his faith, and his passion for helping men navigate life's toughest challenges. So if you're looking for wisdom, inspiration, and a lesson in perseverance, you're in the right place. Grab your coffee or whatever it is you want to drink. And all you listening, I don't want to ever hear anybody say, oh, I have it so tough, because when you hear Rick's story, and some of the people he's talked to, it's a piece of cake. How's it going, Rick?
It's going great, man. Thank you. Great being on the show with you today. Thanks
for
having me.
My pleasure. I know we've been trying to hook up since...
Right. It's been a while.
I want to say December or something.
At least.
It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. We've been bouncing back and forth, and life gets in the way and things happen and storms come through, and before you know it, we're nearly 4 or 5 months into it.
Now, are you actually from California originally?
Yes, originally from California. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you were back in school, I always love to ask this question. What was it that you wanted to do after you finished school?
We talking
career-wise?
We're talking just
school.
Regular school, high school. I wanted to be a professional baseball player.
Really?
Mm-hmm. I wanted to be a professional ball player, and ended up, because of injuries, blew my shoulder out, and I redshirted first year in college and never went back.
Wow.
Joined the military, and the rest is history.
Whoa, wait a minute. Hold up.
Mm-hmm.
What branch?
Army.
Really? Well, thank you for your service.
1981.
Same year I went in.
Yeah.
I'll be damned. I did not know that.
Yeah, I went over to, was part of all the Reforger missions that went on for training in, back then it was West Germany.
Wow. And how long did you serve in the Army for?
2 years.
2 years. Now,
I went in on what they call a buddy system, where I went in with my best friend. And unfortunately, he did not finish his AIT training, went back home and married his high school sweetheart, and I went on to Europe by myself.
Do they even have the buddy system anymore?
I doubt it. I don't even know if they even have an option for 2 years anymore.
I don't know. The military's changed so much.
Yeah, it's changed a bunch.
Yeah, as with everything else. All right, so you did your time in the military, in the Army, but playing baseball, I take it you were a pitcher?
No. I played middle infield, so shortstop or second base, but I was primarily a catcher.
Oh.
Yeah, I was primarily a catcher.
How'd you mess your shoulder up?
Just pulled the shoulder there, just throwing and just taking abuse for all those years behind the plate.
Man, God. All right, so then after the Army, because we were talking briefly before we started, I take it that's when you got into construction?
Yeah, right out of the military, I ended up getting into construction.
And
that's
how long
I made
did you do
my
that?
living. I did that all the way up. Jeez. I did that even after I got into the fire service. I think I finally finished my construction in 2006 or 2007. I finally hung my bags up and said, okay, I'm not going to do this anymore for a living. No, I up until I got injured, I would just do it as a hobby, do my own stuff, my own remodels and things like that around the house.
Okay.
But I got in the military. I got into the fire service in 1996. I got hired full time. And so I probably spent another 10 years just what we called in the fire service as sea shifting. So we'd have our primary career as a firefighter, and then on our days off, we would swing a hammer for extra cash. So that's what I did for about 10 years after I joined the fire service.
All right, why the fire department? Why'd you decide to join that?
It was a childhood dream I always had.
Okay.
I grew up, as you can imagine, you probably did the same thing. I grew up in the era of, Emergency, Squad 51, Johnny and Roy. And, I was just probably 10 years old or so, 11. And I just fell in love with what I was seeing. And it brought about an excitement. And so every time a siren would come by, I was always chasing it down the street to go see what was going on. And, that's
I still
what I kind of quit chasing them. It's after a while, just like, man, they're just going over to so-and-so's house over there. They probably got a headache. It ain't no big deal. Don't worry about it. Nothing's going now. If there was a fire, if there was a big traffic collision somewhere, I might pull up on there and check it out. But, no, I finally stopped all the construction when my wife became a full-time nurse.
Okay.
So I figured there was no way. I wanted her to stay home and be with our kids, but once she was able to get a career in the nursing industry, I hung up my bags once and for all.
Wow. You mentioned Emergency. Two shows I always loved watching back then was Emergency and Adam 12.
Adam 12, yeah.
Yep.
They came right back to back, man.
Yeah.
It was like firefighters, cops. Who do you want to be? And I didn't want to be a cop.
And I think they even did a cross promotion.
Probably did.
Yeah.
They probably did. Yeah.
Oh, my God. All right, now I'm going to have to, when we're done, I'm going to have to turn on Pluto TV and watch one.
Right.
Watch one
It's funny to go back and watch those old episodes because you see just how far the fire service has progressed since the 70s. It's quite interesting to see the differences between then and now. Yeah.
Yeah,
but one of the reasons I didn't pursue it right away was I ended up after the military. I just started getting into stupid trouble. I just got to a place where I was lost. I was circling the drain.
Right.
And after a couple of DUIs, you pretty much just look at your life and go, shoot, well, that dream's gone. I guess I better just pass on that one. Ain't no way I'm going to ever be a fireman now. But the dream never died. And it took me 10 to 15 years of rebranding myself so that I didn't have the track record of my past. And one of the questions I was asked when I finally got hired by the department I was, Anaheim, was, what do you contribute your change to? And I just, quite frankly, I just said, Jesus Christ. I came to know him in a different way. I was raised in religion. My dad was a pastor, a preacher. So I just I pushed all that away. I just, there was that side of me as a kid that was embarrassed of his father, who didn't want any part to do with church or religion. It didn't help any that I was coming out of a very fundamental legalistic mindset of religion. Right. Although I am so thankful that I did. I'm so thankful that that's the life that I had, because it grounded me in ways that I didn't even know was happening. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I go back and I reflect on my spiritual principles and look back and go, wow, you were taught that at a very young age, Rick.
Yeah.
Not many people are given that opportunity to learn these things. Whether or not you capitalize on them or not, they're still in there. You're still hearing it. You're still part of your foundation. So I was very blessed and thankful that that was my journey. But I had to live a prodigal son lifestyle that finally brought me back home.
It's amazing when we're younger, the stupid things that some of us, the stupid things that we do. And me and a couple of my friends have talked about this a lot. And a lot of times I wonder how in the world I am still here today with all the stupid stuff that I used to do.
Yeah.
But the saying is, we were young and stupid.
Just like every other kid in America, we all do stupid things when we're young. I'm just thankful it was before cell phones and videotapes.
Well, I was just going to mention that too, because all that stuff you were doing compared to now, when people will post stuff on social media or whatever, delete it thinking that it goes away, which it doesn't, and like that stuff you were doing back then, if it was on social media, do you think you actually would have gotten into the fire department?
No way.
Yeah.
No way.
A lot of people don't realize that.
No way, because a lot of the investigative backgrounds that they look into is your social media.
Yeah.
I mean, as a fire captain, we used to hear all the stories. I'd be doing an interview and with a potential firefighter coming up, and one of the things you look at is the investigators go back and they look at their social media, and then they come back and they tell the fire department, well, this is what we got found out. This is what we see.
Yeah.
I don't know. It might be a red flag. You might be cautious. And so people have actually not passed that process, gone on to the next stage because of social media.
And I know the police departments, it's the same way. I think the only one that doesn't do anything is the military. But even a lot of businesses do. You have to.
Oh yeah, you have to, because you're dealing with credibility. You're dealing with trust. You're dealing with character. And despite what most people want to say or think, that's a very, very important aspect of a man's journey. Now, with that said, what's even more powerful is when you can take a man's life and you can see the transition. You can see, wow, that guy's growing. So when I was in my late teens, early 20s, and in the military, the lifestyle is totally different. I mean, you did what you are. It was all about partying. It was all about the experience. It's about being in Europe. It was about traveling Europe. It was about the party aspect. It was more than just, I'm going to sign up because I want to be a soldier. I wanted to sign up because I wanted the experience of traveling. I wanted the experience of seeing other things and experiencing other things. And I went off the deep end there for a while, man. I experienced drugs and alcohol like there was no tomorrow.
So
but today's a different story.
I was going to say, I guess with the addiction, is that what it was? Drugs and alcohol?
Well, the drugs and alcohol were a very small part of it, but it led me into a promiscuous lifestyle. And so my drug of choice became sexual. It became
which is not uncommon.
It's not uncommon at all today. But, or even back then. I mean, I remember the first time I heard about sexual addiction, I think it was Wade Boggs, the Boston Red Sox, was talking about his struggle. And at the time we were all thinking like, man, that's just a cop out. That's right. No one's addicted to that stuff. Well,
yes, they are.
Yeah, they are in a powerful, and it's probably one of the most, hideous of the addictions, because it stems from, not understanding how to have an adult intimate relationship. It's all revolves around childhood, adolescent style relationships, which is, what can you do for me?
Yeah.
Instead of how can I meet your need? How can I be of importance to you? What can I do for you as a spouse to make your life better and to make your journey much more enjoyable?
How were you able to overcome that addiction?
Started to realize that, well, first of all, before I can answer that, I have to go back and tell the story that led up to that.
Okay.
I was very, very interested in finding a wife out of the military. So right out of the military, I started dating, and the intention was I wanted to find a wife. So
wait a minute. Back up a minute. You said after the military?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. That's a switch, because most people want to while they're in.
Well, I had been sowing the wild oats for the time that I was there, and I was getting disconnected. And then even afterwards, I still was into drugs, still into alcohol.
Yeah.
But feeling so empty inside because of my upbringing, because of the way my mom and dad brought me up, understanding the spiritual side of a relationship with the maker, the creator.
Right.
And I was just feeling emptied inside. And I knew that having a wife would settle me down and get me going in the right direction. So I prayed for a woman. I prayed for a wife. I prayed, Lord, I pray that she's 5'2" to 5'3", weighs 103 to 105 pounds, dark complexion, dark black hair, stunningly beautiful. When she walked into a room, everybody's head would turn because she was so classy, so elegant. I prayed for her personality. I prayed for her character. I even prayed for how she would treat me in the intimate settings of a husband and wife.
Wow.
And it was very, very detailed. And 2 weeks later, the exact representation of what I had in my head showed up at church.
Oh, come on.
Exactly. To a T. And that's when my life completely changed, when I thought, holy cow, God
He
is
really
that
does
real.
answer your prayers.
He does. It really is that. It's that real. It's that significant. Unfortunately, religion has watered down the spiritual practices of manifestation, the spiritual practices of meditation, the spiritual practices of just understanding the dynamic of who your creator is and where your creator lives. He lives within us. So our creator is now housed in this temple we call a body, and he is there for us, and not to judge us, condemn us, and send us to a devil's hell for eternity.
Right.
And once that switch was made, that was a big part of it, was my wife showing up in my life. Well, I took that manifested prayer, and in 10 years with 2 children, I went from my answered prayer to her telling me, I hate you, I hate God, I hate the church, I quit. And she was walking out the door with 2 boys because my sexual addiction was just not under control. I got to the place where it started off with just pornography. Then from pornography, it went into strip clubs. And then from strip clubs, I was chasing it down the street in prostitution, and, just completely augering in. And a lot of that had to do with I was just not complete as a man. I was holding on to a lot of baggage, a lot of the trauma that I dealt with growing up as a kid. And, I validated myself through sexual promiscuity. And now my wife was out the door ready to quit on everything. And that's when I made the switch. That's when I had to make the change. And what I did is I found a guy that mentored me. He coached me. First of all, I read a book. The book was by an author by the name of Kenneth Nair. And the book title was Understanding the Mind of a Woman.
Oh, wow.
And it was so in-depth. And it just cut me to the heart, just saying, wow, I have no idea how to understand the mind of a woman. And that brought me to a place where I was able to meet my mentor and coach for the next 3.5 years. And Kevin and his wife, Deborah, led my wife and I through a transformation that would have never taken place otherwise. And that transformation took me down the road of understanding why my addiction was taking over my life. And a lot of that had to do with just the way that I internalized my own pain. I was a victim of, some abuse. I was a victim of my own thoughts and ideas behind religion. I was a victim of society, coming up through the ranks, trying to get on with the fire department. I was too white, I was too male, and I was too old in an agenda that was driven by affirmative action. And that was all part of trying to figure my way through what could be considered as being victimized by life.
Yeah.
And when you become victimized by life, you have no control. And when you spin out of control, you start to, you start vibrating at a different level emotionally. And so instead of me pouring all of my energies into the God of my creation, I started to become more resentful about it. I became more of a duty. It became more of a hassle. It wasn't what it was designed to be. My God was turning into more of a judgmental, critical, and man, Rick, if people knew what you were doing, no one would want to be around you or like you. And your hope is that one day you could overcome this, but you're going to struggle through life. Well, that was a lie that I was telling myself.
Right.
And the lie was that somehow I was going to be judged for being confused and being unaware of the direction that my life was going. And so as I started to learn more about spirituality and away from the religious aspect, I started to vibrate at a different level. And that vibration was more of a positive, happy, outgoing, where rather than discouraged, negative, depressed. And there's a frequency scale. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but there's a frequency scale that we all vibrate at. And the highest vibration one can possibly live life in is authenticity. If you are authentic with who you are, you vibrate, I think they say somewhere up around 750 megahertz or something. I could be off with all that, but it's a high vibrational frequency. Yeah. And then courage is at 200.
Huh?
Yeah, courage is at 200. So from 200 up, those are the vibrational frequencies. Well, think about it. It takes courage to even get to that level where you want to vibrate and be more of an inspiration. So you have to have a courage to go within and do your own work. And so once you vibrate at that courageous level of 200 megahertz or above, all the addictions just fall away. Now, I'm not going to say that that's the case for everybody, but here's the bottom line is the frequency at which you vibrate at that lower levels of 200 or less cause you to be depressed, cause you to be angry, cause you to feel bitterness and resentment and judgmental. And those are all the lower vibrational frequencies that we all have. And you could use it, you could say it somewhere like this. It's more like a linear line of polarity. So on one end, you got positive, on the other end, you got negative. And that polarity scale can be up and down your entire life. So the more you think about the negative things in life, the more you're going to vibrate at the negative frequencies of life. And that's where addictions come in. That's where anesthetizing the pain comes in with whatever it is that you choose. And mine happened to be sex. So you asked the question, how did you come out of that? I started understanding that my mindset created the negative polarity that was equivalent to the addictive cycles and your mindset. Right. And so now what I do is I help men get out of that discouragement level, that below 200, and get them to recognize that courage isn't what, people would classify a firefighter as. He's courageous because he's willing to run into a building. He's courageous because of the work he does. He puts his life on the line. Yeah, that's physical. Yeah. But emotionally, the courage is do you have the courage to go within and understand how childhood trauma has affected you as an adult to make the decisions you do today? And the courage to go inside and do the work there first is what helps and causes you to then vibrate up rather than vibrate down, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
It's a different way of looking at addiction. I mean, my father's 28 years sober. Wow. And, he's in the 12-step program, and he does some great work. My brother also is a recovering alcoholic and doing great work in the 12-step programs, which I am totally for. I'm not saying there's any, but those are designed to help you get in touch with the spiritual concepts that help you vibrate at that higher level.
All right. So you mentioned when you were going through this, your wife left you, took the kids.
She didn't leave me. She said she was going to leave me. She said she, but I had to. Yeah.
Okay.
If I didn't change my ways, she was out the door for sure.
Okay. But something else you said was that. Well, you said she hated you and hated God and religion.
God and the church, yeah.
And
she hated everything, yeah.
How is her faith now?
It's strong. Yeah, we've been married almost 40 years now, and today
really, that is awesome.
We look at what we went through, and and a lot of men and women do. They see the initial 7 years. Mine took 10, so they see that first 7 years and all the work that goes into two human beings coming together and trying to navigate life, through the lens of another person. And it becomes very contentious at times, and it becomes littered with conflict and unresolved conflicts. And that causes us to then start to vibrate in that lower degree, that lower level again. And that's where my life was going. My life was going in that direction because I didn't know how to be, I didn't know how to show up as the man I needed to show up for my wife. I was more checking off the boxes. We went to church 3 times a week. I had a career. I was supporting my family. And those are the things that are that's a good check mark for you. You're doing the good things. But inside I was still empty. Inside I was still struggling. Inside I was torn apart because I didn't deal with the trauma and the pain and the hurt of what happens when you grow up as a young man. I mean, the mind is in the theta state from ages 1 to 8. It's in that state where subconsciously you're being programmed with your belief systems, how you handle stress, how you handle emotion, how you navigate life as a 1 to 8-year-old. Now think about that. We are raised by parents who have their own traumas that they had to deal with, who had their own issues that they've had to navigate through. And then they were raised by grandparents, before that. And so we've got this lineage of belief systems and the way we deal with our emotions that are passed down. And we just take them on as ourselves because it's normal. So most of the stuff we do in life and the things we believe aren't even our beliefs. They're not even ours to hold. We just hold on and we gravitate towards because that's what we were programmed to believe at that young age. So for me, having to go back and actually do the internal work of understanding what that was, how it happened, why it happened, and how I can now change that narrative to work for me rather than against me. And that is the biggest hurdle in overcoming the addictive cycles, is going back in and changing the narrative, changing the story behind why it is you do what you do in a way that becomes more positive, more responsible, more reliable, because now you're actually taking the adult mind and you are now reparenting the child mind, and you're allowing the child to be a participant with you rather than forgetting that he's still there. So much of our time we grow up and we don't even realize how much of our younger child are running the programs of our lives. And we can't figure out why it's happening. Why is it that I keep cycling through this addictive mentality? Well, it's because you're proving to yourself that you're not worthy. You're proving to yourself that you're not lovable. You're proving to yourself that whatever belief system that you had growing up, you're now validating that in your cycles in life as an adult. And with me, that became very evident when my wife told me, I hate you, I hate God, I hate the church, I quit. I knew there was way more. I knew that I loved my wife more than anything. I knew that I had prayed for her. I knew that everything was supposed to. God gave her to me.
Or gave her to you. Yeah.
I'd taken her heart and completely trashed it and thrown it like it meant nothing. And that caused me to have an emotional awareness that says, okay, I've got to figure this out. And I did, with the help of my mentor, with the help of an author from that book. I spent the next 3.5 years just learning how to navigate that cycle of unworthiness that kept me stuck in that addictive loop.
You're listening to Conversations with Rich Bennett. We'll be right back. Maryland Pickers is a local junk removal service, and they also have dumpster rentals as well. I actually called Jeremy when we were doing our spring cleaning this year, and he brought the dumpster out and quick to answer the phone. Came out the day he said he was going to pick it up, answered all my questions. Everything was fine. Phenomenal. Very professional to work with. So if you're looking for junk removal service, if you're looking to rent a dumpster, contact Maryland Pickers. Go to marylandpickers.com or give them a call at 443-206-1859. Again, that's 443-206-1859. Tell them that Rich from Harford County Living sent you. Hey, what was the name of that book again?
It was called How to Understand the Mind of a Woman by Kenneth Nair.
How did you, first of all, that's just mind-boggling that it was a man that wrote that. But how did you end up finding that book?
My mom gave it to me.
Really?
Yeah, my mom gave it to me.
Wow.
And I don't know how she found it, but she found it. She gave it to me. I read that book from cover to cover within probably a day and a half, 2 days. And then I read it again. And then I read it again. And it was like, holy cow, the light bulbs just kept coming on. And what it was basically just showing you that the relationship between a husband and a wife, as much as you want to think it's about you, it's really about you reflecting or your wife reflecting like a mirror who you are.
Yeah.
And so she was reflecting the enemy within me. So all the conflict we were having and the conflict she would have with me, it was all our reflection in the mirror of another human being. And so it really wasn't them. It really wasn't me doing it to her. It really wasn't her doing it to me. It was what I was seeing as a reflection of myself in her. And as I saw that reflection, I didn't like what I was seeing. And it was up to me to change that. The Bible talks about this principle of taking the beam out of your own eye before you can see clearly how to remove the speck from your brother's eye. And so the dynamic that I use is we are learning to take the beam out of our eye when we go inside and do the work internally to understand who we are, why we're the way we are, and how to become the best version of ourselves so that we can have an impact for good in this world rather than cycle us out of control and continue with the generational sin, generational trauma of whatever it is that you were brought up to believe were your belief systems.
So how long was it after you and your wife worked everything out? How long was it before you became a marriage coach?
It took me about 10 years to get to a place where I could walk through. Well, first, it took me 10 years to earn her trust back. That was the main reason. I was trying to build trust. I had set a new track record. And it was in that new track record and proving to her and myself that no matter what, I was committed to this lifestyle. I was committed to her, that she was able to, she forgave me off the bat. Don't get me wrong. I mean, she forgave me, but the trust factor was a hard hurdle to overcome. And once the trust was earned, we started to pour into the lives of other men, other couples, men and women, who were struggling with their own addictions. And so we spent several years with our church as lay counselors, if you will, helping. In fact, they labeled us as the 911 response to marriage. We were dealing with the ones that no one knew how to deal with.
Oh, wow.
When you deal with betrayal, that is a hurdle that is not easily overcome, especially in the heart of a woman, especially from her heart, because it's very personal. It's an identity issue. You are choosing this over that. You're choosing her over me. You're choosing porn over our relationship. And it becomes a very debilitating identity crisis for a woman who's been betrayed at the hand of her husband, her lover, and especially for me, the one who prayed for her to come into his life. And I basically took that prayer as though it meant nothing. But here's the reality of it is, prayers are not always answered in the way that we think they need to be answered. Now, let me explain to you. Now, I told you what I prayed for, right? Mm-hmm. But here's how I ended the prayer. But Lord, most importantly, I pray that she will help me become the man of God you want me to be. Amen. I didn't know what that meant. I had no idea what that meant. All I knew was I felt pretty bad that I was praying this carnal-minded prayer for the physicality of this beautiful woman that's going to rescue me, and we're going to live happily ever after and enjoy just the intimacy that I always longed for, and required me to go to hell for 10 years.
Wow.
And learn those lessons of life in a very powerful way.
Something very important that you mentioned. You said it took her 10 years to earn your trust back and forget. Well, you said she forgave you right away.
Yeah.
But, and this is something a lot of people don't think about, how long did it take for you to earn your own trust back and forgive yourself?
That's a very good question. In all reality, that's something that I've just learned to do here in the last 2 or 3 years.
Really?
Yeah. And a lot of that had to do with the injury that I sustained when I fell and I broke my neck and was paralyzed from the chest down. Had a lot of time to contemplate and think about. My story goes from the answered prayer to the addictive cycles that nearly destroyed us, to a career that was absolutely phenomenal, one that I never worked a day in my life as a result of, because I loved what I did, to then retire, even at the end of my career, my son was murdered. So I lost my son at 52. God. And then by the time I retired and moved to Nashville, that was my late 50s. I fell and broke my neck. So I was dealing with rebounded trauma from my son's murder to my broken neck, that trauma. And so I was dealing with that in a way that really took me down another dark, dark path. And it scared the living bejeebies out of me. And I said, man, I cannot have. In fact, my wife said, look, we've been through way too much for you to give up on life now. And It feels like you are giving up. And I was giving up. I trying to navigate my son's death. And as a grieving parent, just about destroyed me, man. I mean, it was one of those things that I just like, why me? I mean, I've put so much effort into becoming this new man, only to be hit with this event where now I'm a grieving dad. And then on top of that, I fall and I break my neck. And so I looked at life like I'm being judged. I must have done something terrible. Life is just too hard. God must not really love me. I had all these reasons why this could be the case. What it boiled down to was the ability to forgive. That's what it came down to. See, my wife forgave me.
Yeah.
My wife was the first person to forgive the unforgivable, me. And she did it in such a way that created our family that we have today. After she forgave me and we started to work on our relationships 10 years in, we had a third child. And her name is Victoria because it was represented a victory in our marriage and the way that we now navigate life. So now we've got this beautiful she'll be 25 years old this year. So I've got this beautiful 25-year-old soon-to-be girl that represents to me the victory that we had in our marriage. Well, that victory took a lot of work as we went on. And as I started to navigate through helping other men, doing the service work, it really brought me out of my shell, out of my depression. Well, when Michael died and I ended up breaking my neck, that kind of threw me back into that crucible of life again.
Right.
And what I realized was I was holding on to the resentment, bitterness, and anger towards the man that murdered my son. And by holding on to those resentments, that's that negative polarity that I was talking about earlier, where when you ruminate on things, what you think, you become. So as a man thinks, so is he. So as I was ruminating on the unfairness of my life, I was ruminating on being a victim of my life. I was ruminating on the man who betrayed me at such a level by stealing and killing my son. I was ruminating on not having him around. I was ruminating on the what ifs. What kind of father would he have been? What kind of husband would he have been? What kind of man would he have been? What would he have accomplished in life? And everything was regulated to the past. I was always thinking, well, what if? What if?
Yeah.
And then that caused me to think on those things. And as you think, you create. So I was creating the very thing that I was ruminating on, which is my past. And so what I had to learn to do is stop thinking about the past, because that's where fear is rooted, and start thinking about the future, where the anticipation of faith takes place, where you can actually create a life that's worthy of living. And as I navigated through that cycle, I forgave the man who murdered my son in a way that was authentically real, that was more than just lip service. Yeah, I could say
Really?
I forgive you, but to actually believe it and feel empathy for him, feel empathy for him, feel a sense of, wow, man, what was it that this guy has gone through in his life that would say it's okay to murder a 23-year-old man? Yeah. What was going on in your head? So having that, and then it dawned on me, the very man that he was me. Wow. That's who I was with my wife. When I betrayed her at those levels of adultery and pornography and all the things that encapsulated in our relationship, and she forgave me anyway. Yeah. When that time finally came for me to process my grief in that way, it was like the light bulb came on. And so it started me down a track of learning how to forgive. So forgiving him was number one. Then I realized, well, you know what? I really haven't even forgiven myself. Right. And so it started me down a journey on learning how to forgive myself. And you know what? Not only have I not only forgiven myself, I haven't even forgiven some of the stuff my parents did to me. Mm-hmm. I've been holding on to this stuff for 50 plus years. And I had to, start. So it started me down the track of learning to forgive for all of the right reasons, rather than to forgive because it was out of my duty as a Christian. Right. Well, you got to forgive him. Well, yeah, I'll tell you what, I'll forgive him. Yeah, I say I forgive you. But the reality of life is, when you're faced with forgiving the unforgivable, that's a journey you got to do inside. That's something that starts from within you. And when you start the work within you, that's you removing the beam from your eye so that you can see clearly exactly how much lack of forgiveness your life really represents. You hold on to grudges. You hold on to animosity. You hold on to conflicts. You hold on to judgments. You hold on to criticisms. And we hold on to these things. The wife that didn't change her ways, the husband that divorced me and left me, the career that didn't work out, the children that aren't doing what they're supposed to do, or whatever the case, whatever excuse you want to give yourselves. And I gave myself plenty of them. when you hold on to that, you become that.
Yeah.
And so for somebody who struggles with addiction, one of the major things that they're doing is they're struggling with the inability to forgive themselves for what they've caused, not only in their lives, but in the lives of other people. And believe me, my head was going down that track again, and it scared the bejeebies out of me. And I said, I can't do this. I can't. We've gone through way too much to end like this.
Right.
And it just started me on that journey again of learning how to forgive myself for the experiences that I had that created turmoil in the lives of others and myself. And after navigating that for, this last 3 years, two or 3 years, it lit a fire under me again that says, I wonder how many men out there are struggling with this still. I know I did for many years. So if I struggled with it, there's a good chance many others are struggling with it.
I would say so.
So that turned me to the corner. Now what I do is, my firehood brother, the brotherhood of the fire service is a family. We call it a fire family for a reason, because you're living with these people 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
Every day you're at work, and they become a family. And I saw a lot of my brothers and sisters suffering in ways that I could relate to, but it's still at a level that I'm not sure I want to jump in and get my feet wet in that environment again, because that means I've got to go back and experience that pain again. That means I need to go back and experience that trauma.
Right.
But through the lens of their lives, not mine. And I didn't know if I can handle it. Well, after going through this last 2-3 years, it became very evident to me that my purpose was to go back into the fire service and help men navigate as husbands in the lives of their relationships so that they can break that trauma, that generational trauma that gets passed on to their children and then their children's children. And for me now, looking at it, I had to go through everything I did to get to this place. So the moral of this story is never discount what you're going through in life. Adversities, challenges, setbacks, conflicts are all designed for a purpose.
Yeah.
And the purpose is for you to find the gift in that adversity rather than to find the guilt. When you look for the gift rather than the guilt, you will cycle back out of that. You will start to find your way down that polarity scale more on the higher frequency ends of 200 or above. That's where you get the courage to do the work. And then from there, it just starts going up and up and up. So unconditional love and authenticity are the two highest vibrational frequencies that a man or a woman can experience.
Yeah.
And when you do that, it starts to attract the people that you need to have in your life so that you could be of service to them. And that's what I found out, is that the more that I started to put myself out there, the more people were attracted to what I was doing and what I was teaching. And so finding that little sweet spot was going back into the fire service, back into my brotherhood, back into my fire family, and pouring into them at a level that I had never done before.
That is great. I want to thank you for that, because a lot of people don't think about that. Going back and helping those that you served with. And I tried to do that a while ago. I started another podcast strictly to talk to people in the military and first responders, mainly about like PTSD and everything. But I found out that because, being a veteran, I figured they'd be comfortable talking to me about it. Rick, I ain't lying. It was very hard to find guests. And I just gave up on that podcast and said, if that's the case, I'll just bring them on this one, because this way more people hear it. And if I'm helping them or they're helping me, either way, then I know some listeners are being helped as well. Actually, something else I'd love to ask, because you do the coaching and everything. Can you share a story or two and you don't have to mention any names, about someone that you were able to help through the coaching or even the speaking?
I got a phone call. It was right around the Christmas time. So it was right around the end of the year, first of this year. And it was from a very close friend of mine who knew a guy who was in the fire service who was struggling and wanted to commit suicide. And I called him up, talked with him for a while, and, he was in a place where, but you don't understand. You just don't understand. My wife has given up. There's no hope. There's no way I could ever earn this. I had no way I could ever save this marriage. And my wife just doesn't love me anymore. My wife wants a divorce. She's done. I've blown it. And I don't even know if I want to live anymore. I mean, I can't live without my family. And one of the things that we were able to talk about is your wife, in the way that you're showing up right now, the way you show up, your wife is discouraged. Your wife is done. She's over it. She doesn't want anything to do with you anymore. I get that. My wife did the same thing to me. I showed up in a certain way, and she hated me, God, and the church, and she quit. Mm-hmm. So here was my challenge to him. If you will do the work on transforming the way you think about who you are and show up differently for your wife as somebody who is sincerely committed to meeting her needs at every level, your wife will have a different perspective and understanding on who you are. Now, is it going to take some time? Yeah, because you've got a track record you've got to overcome.
Right.
So you've got to build a new track record. And he went and he did a 90-day in-house rehabilitation. Then he got out and, we've still stayed in contact. Him and his wife are now working it out. They are now very much on the road to recovery. And he just recently gave his life to the Lord. So
nice.
The possibilities are endless to what you can accomplish. And it requires just one thing. It requires just a spark of hope. Mm-hmm. And that spark of hope comes from faith. And if you could have the faith of a mustard seed, according to the scripture, you can move mountains. And when I talk to men today, I give them two options. In life, we look at life through the lens of two primary emotions. One is fear, and the other one is love. When you look at life through the lens of fear, you are always looking in the rearview mirror at the experiences that you lost something. Mm-hmm. And the fear of losing again will keep you stuck where you cannot move forward. So you then repeat your life over and over, and it turns into a rut. It turns into a cycle. It turns into discouragement, disappointments. Right. And so we stay stuck at that level of what we think about, especially what we think about ourselves. So as a man thinks, so is he. The other spiritual component to that is, I believe it was Paul the Apostle said it best. He said, don't conform to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Well, transforming by the renewing of your mind doesn't mean I got to transform, go to church 3 times a week, make sure I got this perfect truth that I'm following, and I can't step out and be judged. And so we navigate life through, look at me, I got it right. That's not what he's talking about. The conformity is we conform to the world through fear. That is the lens at which the world operates. It's a lens of fear. And so they become victimized by life. So life happens to them.
Right.
And because life is happening to them, they have no control. And because they have no control, they're like this ship out on the sea that's just tossed to and from the waves and the winds, and they have no direction. They have no way of compassing a direction in life. And so they're just tossed by from whatever event happens. And that is a miserable existence. However, there's hope. There's another side we can look at life through. Instead of looking at it through the lens of fear, we can look at it through the lens of love. And what the lens of love looks like, it's the lens of faith. And faith is what you anticipate, even though you don't have it yet. So you become very clear that this is who I am, even though that's not where I am yet, but this is who I am. This is what I am, is what I'm going to be. These are the things I want to accomplish. And so your faith becomes anticipatory. So you anticipate better things. You anticipate growth. You anticipate impact. You anticipate value in your own life. And then that becomes the lives of other people that you come in contact with. And so instead of looking at the past being tied to all of your mistakes, being tied to all of the criticism, being tied to all of the judgments that you have of yourself and others have of you as well because of that, now you are cutting that off. And now you're looking forward. And when you look forward with the anticipation of love, you start to see that every aspect of your life was training you to become who it is that you are. And so rather than to, criticize all that and criticize the journey you've been on, you embrace it and say, man, I am, it's going to sound wild, but thank God I was a sex addict. Thank God, this art, I lost my son. Thank God I broke my neck. These were all traumas that helped to develop me into the man I am today. That was the end of that prayer. But most importantly, Father, I pray that she will help me become the man of God you want me to be. Well, how are you going to become the man of God you want me to be if you've never faced trials, if you've never faced tribulations, if you've never if you never experienced adversities and hardships? See, we look at hardships and adversity as though somebody's doing it to us. And when you become victimized, that means you're living in fear. And when you live in fear, you're going to be critical. You're going to be judgmental. You're going to be angry. You're going to be hostile. You're going to hold on to resentments. And those are the things that are going to run through your psyche. And you will create those in your near future. So the life you want is the life you focus on. So focus on that which is good, that which is noble, that which is pure, that which is understanding, that which has grace and mercy, and stop beating yourself up and judging yourself and others as though they're worthless pieces of you-know-what because they did this to me. See, here's the reality. Life is not happening to you. Life is happening for you. Start to learn what life is happening for you for. What is it that it's happening for you so that you can create? And it became very obvious. I've got a life of addiction. I've got a marriage now that's overcome that addiction. And not only had we overcome that addiction, but we've overcome the loss of a child. Right. We've overcome the traumatic loss of my body function and being paralyzed. And we did that together in a way that has transformed our lives by the way we think, instead of conforming our lives to the fears of what has happened to us. So that's the bottom line that I share with everybody today, especially those I counsel and coach, is that changing your perspective, having that paradigm shift, changing the meaning that you give your experiences will change the life that you have, so that you can experience the life that's worth living.
Wow. All right. Tell people how to get in touch with you, because we know there are a lot of people out there that need your help. So how do they get in touch with you? And also tell them about the workbook.
Well, the workbook is just a real quick thing that I put together in the fire service. When you're dealing with mass casualty incidents, you can get very overwhelmed with where to start. How do you start with chaos that's this big, and you start where you stand? So the book that I offer, the free book that I give away in my my website, just kind of goes into that a little bit. But that's just the groundwork of where I take people. Right. So it's just basically, it's start where you stand. So START all have a significant impact on what those letters represent. You can get a hold of me at rickcheatham.com or rick@rickcheatham.com. That is my website. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. And all of those are linked to my website at rickcheatham.com.
So before I get to my last question, Is there, well, first of all, thank you, because, oh my God, I've learned a lot. Your story is amazing. You need to write a book.
I might be in the process of that.
Well, which means if you are, you got to come back on after it's finished.
I've got one of them. The first book, I'm in the process of writing a book right now called My Answered Prayer, and it's the journey of my wife and I through the 40 years of what we've had to deal with to get to where we are today. And then the second book will be Start Where You Stand, which is the spinoff of everything that I'm offering in this free pamphlet that I give in my website. It's basically taking that and digging deeper down into what that actually represents and means.
All right. So is there anything you'd like to add before I get to my last question?
No, go ahead. I'm ready.
All right. And this, I'm not going to ask you what I normally ask all my guests, because I mean, everything you've been through, your stories are just simply amazing, and people can learn from them. And it's when we were talking about forgiveness. I just had somebody on not too long ago, and we were talking about forgiveness. And you're right; you can't just say it; you have to mean it, and that, which is something I add to my daily routine now. So when I get up or before I go to bed, I don't just say a prayer and say what I'm grateful for. I also will either forgive somebody, something that's happened or whatever, and why I forgive it. But, and when you mentioned about your oldest son, was it Michael?
Yes.
Being murdered, and how you were able to forgive the person that murdered him. Do you mind sharing a story about one of your most favorite moments with your son Michael, and even if it was with the rest of the family, it doesn't matter, but sharing one of those moments, one of those cherished moments or memories that you still have?
Some of them are pretty personal, but I will share this one. My son chose a career in the medical cannabis industry. So being a firefighter and knowing what the implications of that could be, my wife and I were very cautious, and we didn't always want to support that kind of deal. I mean, I understood his reasons why, and I finally got to the place where I just said, okay, tell me what it is that motivates you to go down this career path. And he said, I'm tired of burying my friends to heroin overdoses after they've been weaned off of pharmaceuticals such as opioids, dealing with injuries that they sustained through sports or whatever it was. And he said, I have a plant that I can grow in my backyard that I can manipulate through its strains that could literally help people overcome a lot of the things that they suffer with when dealing with pharmaceutical prescriptions. Mm-hmm. And we looked at him, my wife and I, we said, there's nothing that we can do to change where you're going because your heart is in it. And we don't want to talk you out of it, but please be careful.
Right.
We're just so afraid of what the consequences could be. And my son looked at us square in the eyes and he said, what are you afraid of? If I die, I go to heaven. Isn't that what you've always taught me? So what are you so fearful of?
Wow.
And my wife looked at him and said, son, we're fearful of you dying first because that's not normal. And what we don't know that we could handle that. And he just looked at us and said, if you're, I would say, but we'll say it the way he said, if you live life afraid to die, you will never live life.
Wow.
And that is probably my most memorable exchange with my son. And that was probably a year before he died.
Wow.
If you're not willing to die for what you believe in, then you're not really willing to live life.
Yeah.
I wonder how many people are not willing to really live life because of the fear that they have of dying, or the fear that they have of being made fun of, or the fear that they have of being embarrassed, you know? And so when we can get to the lifestyle that my son had at only 22, 23 years old, that if that's what you're fearful of, how are you really going to even live? Mm-hmm. Life is worth living. Life is worth having impact, because when you do, you change the course of another man's life forever. And when you have that kind of an impact on another man's life, it's hard to live life without being gracious. It's hard to live life without gratitude. And that's one of the things that I've been so important for me, is learning to live life from the perspective of gratitude. I'm thankful I broke my neck. Here's why. I found some precious jewels in breaking my neck. Number one, being reconnected with my maker in a way when you can't move your body and you can't do things, all you have is your mind. That's all you can do is think. And so breaking my neck brought me down a course where I was able to process my thoughts in a way that became more powerful, more empowering for me to express who I really am. Burying my son gave me the opportunity to really learn how to forgive those who are unforgivable. Going through the pornography taught me that it's not a lesson in self-deprecation. It's a lesson in understanding why we do what we do, so that we can change the addictive cycles of anesthetizing that pain. So addiction is all about anesthetizing pain. Yeah. So find out why you got the pain, and now you can overcome the addiction. It's a beautiful thing. So when you look for the gift in the adversities, that's where you find the empowerment. But most of us, we look at the guilt rather than the gift. We look at the shame rather than to find the purpose. We seek to blame others rather than to accept responsibility for the way that we interpret life and how it's happening. And so when we become victims, you cannot have gratitude. Those two don't line up. You can't live a life of fear and a life of love. You cannot live a life of gratitude and live a life of victimization. You can't serve two masters, as the scripture says. You will either love the one or rebuke the other, or you'll do it vice versa. You can't live both lifestyles. So at what point do we get sick and tired of being sick and tired of living the life of being a victim? It's when challenges have happened to you at such a level where you get to the point where you say, I give up, I quit. And that's when you can reach out to your creator, and your creator says, okay, are you ready now to get off the merry-go-round of life? Are you ready now to stop going round and round life on the merry-go-round of addiction, of victimization, of blaming, of resentment, of hostility, of anger, of broken promises, of broken relationships? Are you ready now that you've experienced all of this to have an impact, not only on your life, but on the lives of everyone that comes after you and for them, so that they can be free from the prison of their addictive cycles that keep them stuck to thinking they're worthless POSs with no accountability to ever have any hope of change, because life sucks and it happens to me instead of for me. But that's the biggest lie we're all told. Mm-hmm. You don't get the life you want, you get the life you focus on. So focus on a life worthy of living. Focus on a life that has an impact on yourself and others, and watch what happens. I guarantee it. I guarantee it. Your life will change on a dime once you understand how your thoughts keep you stuck.
Rick, I want to thank you so much. I mean, God, those of you listening, I know you've learned a lot. Please, please, please get back to me. Tell me what you've learned. And if you need Rick's assistance, make sure you go to his website and connect with him, and I'll have the link for that in the show notes. Rick, again, thank you so much. God bless you. It's been a true honor and a pleasure to have you on.
Well, thank you, Rich. I appreciate that very much, and I'm so thankful for what you do, and blessed that we were able to finally connect.
I have a funny feeling this isn't the last time. We're going to be connecting again in the future.
I sure hope so.
Thank you for listening to the Conversations with Rich Bennett. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and learned something from it as I did. If you'd like to hear more conversations like this, be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you have a moment, I'd love it if you could leave a review. It helps us reach more listeners and share more incredible stories. Don't forget to connect with us on social media or visit our website at conversationswithrichbennett.com for updates, giveaways, and more. Until next time, take care, be kind, and keep the conversations going.